And we are in
Perfect.
loading up. We've got Darkodius now on the Teemo Ezreal and Game Boy Rob with the Ashe LeBlanc Legion Marauders with the Katarina guest appearance. Now, I've seen this list start to rely on Incisive Tactician a little bit more in recent days, but revisiting that old Katarina rally technology is also a treat, to say the least.
And we love to see Game Boy Rob playing, as he calls them, the boys. As everyone else knows them, it's strength in numbers. The 8 mana card, slow, summon two Legion Marauders. Not a meta card, usually, I would say, but Rob has climbed. I know last season he was over 500 LP at one point with this version of the deck. Really cool to see.
With the Katarina as well.
Yep. It's really cool to see top players popularizing, new decks, underplayed cards, and showing the potential for diversity in the meta. So I'm super happy. This is what you'd expect to see from Rob, and this is what we all love to see from Rob.
And now
Go for it.
Sorry, Scarzig. No. I'm always going to clam up. I'm not going to cut you off.
No worries, man. I was just gonna say, I know he's known for also running triple shampoo as well, so he has multiple rally effects.
What?
Yes.
Rob!
Triple
He's
shampoo.
A madman.
He is a madman, and that could definitely be relevant in this matchup too. I know the freeze effect lasts the whole turn, but generally, like, the less draws that you're getting, so like the less times you're pressing the pass button in this matchup, the better. So we'll see if those rallies come into effect here.
And open deck list, Darkodius now is sweating bullets. Every time there's 5 mana available, Darkodius is like, oh, please, no, don't play the Shunpo. And now you're like, Glory Seeker. Phew, at least that's not a rally. But Teemo, it looks like their days might be numbered. When you have situations like this on the board, even though you know your opponent's running removal, running frostbites, as long as your units are still getting to attack, get that value, that's all you care about. The frostbites coming through from Ashe, the +2/+2 coming through from the Marauders, and that's just going to stack up and carry over to an eventual strength in numbers, even by trying to stop the attack that's coming through right now.
And I do have Rob's list pulled up at the moment. He decided to play it a little conservative. He's only on 2 Shunpo, 1 Reckoning, and of course, 3 strength in numbers.
Ooh, so Darkodius taking a risk to commit the 1 static shock against a troll chant.
I just want to say too, I think it's a good meta call here, bringing these freeze decks. We see Darkodius and Game Boy Rob both on the freeze decks. They both do very well into a large portion of the meta, specifically dragons with Demacia. That's just a
and Thresh Nasus as well, I would say,
and
right?
Thresh Nasus, exactly. Yep, 2 decks that we're definitely expecting to be pretty popular.
Reckoning is also a pretty king card. It scoops up a lot of decks that you really wouldn't expect it to. Like being able to slay a Thresh or maybe clear an Aurelia Azir type situation. Even Swain can get scooped up by Reckoning a lot of the time. And it's just a great, just mid-tier monster. But Game Boy Rob is definitely making this look a lot stronger than people have been giving it credit for. Yep. Legion Marauders are stuck to the board, and you can't get rid of this level of HP. And now with Darkodius having only a Teemo in play, is still feeling the pressure of a Shunpo coming out at any time.
And these Marauders getting to 5 HP is very important. It puts them out of Brittle Steel range, right? So then you need a Harsh or a Flash Freeze to deal with them. And they just keep on growing. So they're a constant threat on the board. Very hard to like permanently deal with from the side of Darkodius.
Mm-hmm. No Puff Cap Peddler to shore up this strategy. Not getting the Puff Caps into the deck of Game Boy Rob is very unfortunate. You want to try to get this set up, and then if they are going for a rally or a big lethal swing, there is potential for you to just put a bunch of burn on the stack and try to close out. There is an Ezreal still waiting, but when you're forcing the Mystic Shot to try to keep this board even, you know that you're in a great spot.
And we only see 13 shrooms currently in the deck, in Rob's deck, so that is not many, not even enough. In the worst odds of scenarios, drawing 13 on a card, it still would not kill Game Boy Rob.
So Ash is still alive thanks to that Troll Chant, going to very easily survive this Ice Shard as well. Darkodius, of course, with the Ice Shard technology, expecting something a bit more swarmy, but just this large HP total isn't really going to cut it. Frost doesn't have the flexibility that you would expect it to, right? When it comes to being able to run things like Blighted Ravine and an Avalanche, because sometimes these Freljord control decks just care about wiping the opponent's board, but the Ezreal list needs to keep its own board maintained because of the Puffcat Peddlers and the Teemos. So these two-sided removals become a lot worse. And when you're relying on P and Z to do most of the heavy lifting, it can't really keep up with this sort of mid-game onslaught. And every answer that comes out from our Darkodius is just met by another threat from Game Boy Rob. This looks like an absolutely monstrous open attack.
Yeah, I mean, if we went for the Ash Flash Freeze here and then opened, it would be a double freeze and the Teemo would be unable to block, unless I'm missing something. I guess Troll Chant also does the same thing, though.
Yeah, you would still need to stack an official Frostbite to level Ash.
Okay.
But at this point, I think, yeah, here it is. The double Frostbite's going to come through. At this point, even if you open attacked, the Teemo can only block one thing, and Game Boy Rob is just guaranteeing, right, that the lethal is still going to be presented. Just developing, I imagine there's like, if there's another Ice Shard to kill the LeBlanc, and then, you know, a couple Frost Bites to stop the Legion Marauders, then it still wouldn't be lethal. And Game Boy Rob doing the right choice here to just develop further, get Darkodius to commit a little bit more mana before sealing the deal on this game.
And we did have that Static Shock used earlier a couple rounds ago. Man, do we wish we had access to another Static Shock right now.
It's been a really strong card in a bunch of different matchups, but when you're deciding on like your removal package, there's a lot of different things you do have to consider, right? Like different decks, and right now decks are more inclined to run like the Swarm package, the anti-Swarm package, rather than the big threats removal package, things like Thermogenic Beam deck. Legion Marauders have been, you know, a card that I think a lot of players have been really waiting to come into the metagame and shine. With things like counterfeit copies, when they were adding, when they buffed Blood for Blood, and they finally added like Strength in Numbers, people are like, or Iterative Improvement. Every time they add some kind of new pseudo synergy, players are just so, I think, happy to revisit this card, and now it's found a home because you have the Troll Chants and the Elixir of Irons and etc. to protect the Legion Marauders. You just set up your mid game to prepare for the Strength in Numbers.
100%, and it looks like we can dive back into the game here. Round 2, we are looking at Thresh Nasus into Freeze. This should be an interesting one, to say the least.
Yeah, I being in Darkodius' shoes here, a number of games in this matchup, I do think that the Freeze Teemo deck is slightly favored here. Of course, it does depend on how it's built. Like some people will tech in Ice Shard, for example, as something that can give it an edge, especially when you see the style deck that Game Boy Rob's running with these Blighted Caretakers. We do have Static Shock, though. That's going to be a big card. We're going to have to eventually want to draw into it. And also, of course, we still need to find that Foundry, too. And one of the most decisive things, too, that we see is that Darkodius had Teemo on turn 1, and that is huge in this matchup. But I don't know that he's going to be able to save it here from this Vile Feast.
Yeah, so Vile Feast is going to come through, scoop up that Teemo. At the very least, there's also a Puffcat Peddler to come down and start making use of this Brittle Steel. A lot of the units do have very high attack power, but low HP, you see. So the Brittle Steel is going to do wonders for Darkodius going here into the mid-game. Merciless Hunter, still a fantastic card. You can pull the puff cap to the side and try to pressure with just some damage rather than looking to remove it right away. And with Blighted Caretaker now with the attack token, I wonder if Game Boy Rob is going to opt for a more aggressive line.
Yeah, he knows he's on the clock here and that he has to really be the one to put the pressure on Darkodius. Because as time goes and more draws go, the more likely Darkodius is to find foundries and more freeze effects to endlessly stall the Nasus, as well as Game Boy Rob draw shrooms. So
Yeah, so I do like the commitment of the wings here as well to just punch through. And yeah, taking that line as you mentioned. Just being more aggressive, trying to push more Nexus damage, rather than trading the 3-3 for the Puffcat Peddler. The risk of that combat, like, not even working because of Brittle Steel or Troll Chant is just too much to consider. And so it's just a matter of getting this damage through around the side instead. Darkodius seems to be playing a bit more conservatively as well, not bothering to also cast Brittle Steel on the waves, going to take that damage instead.
Yep, 100%, and we're seeing a trigger here that you can unlock the Cursed Keeper to get that 4-3, but Merciless Hunter, very strong card here to give vulnerable to Ezreal, a win condition, to say the least, on the side of Darkodius. So Merciless Hunter is a card that's been getting a lot of praise from top players. It's getting an auto-include in almost every Shurima deck. And I would say rightfully so. You really see the power level of this card on full display here.
Yeah, the ability to just bring that 4 HP to bear against the target you want consistently really makes that stat line matter even more. Or you just give the units vulnerable, pull them to the side with your shrimpy units, and then that 4 HP is suddenly hitting your opponent's Nexus. The versatility of this card, I think, really contributes to its power level as well, where you're able to use the stat line and that fearsome keyword to near maximum effectiveness in every game. And Darkodius is definitely feeling the pressure now.
Would you guys say this
certainly.
is a small or medium-sized Nasus? It's 5-5.
The 5-5 Nasus, it's just Game Boy Rob, as you talked about, really knows that, you know, Nasus isn't going to be the big win condition here, and is just relying on the rest of the early mid-game threats to do the job. I think you would definitely still slam the Nasus down regardless, because if by some miracle you have, through your early pressure, run Darkodius out of answers, they have to find still somewhere for that big amount of damage to go. And both players are actually playing this pretty conservatively. Game Boy Rob trying to crunch the numbers and seeing if an open attack is better, has another Blighted Caretaker, and being able to potentially pull the Puffcat Peddler to the side, pull the Ezreal to the side, and just push through more damage on top of everything else matters a lot from this position.
When your opponent is passing with 5 cards in hand on 9 mana into your open attack, or into your attack rather, you know it's not going to go the way you want it to go.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we see happening right now. The Ezreal trigger levels are coming in here, and we're 2 away currently, down to 1 away, and the Peddler stays alive. The Ice Veil Archer does fall. But we do get to push a little bit of damage here, more than a little bit of damage here on the side of Rob, and putting opponent to 5 HP feels good.
Mm-hmm. Now, pretty much anything that sticks from this position is going to be a fantastic atrocity target potentially, and you can see that the consistent vulnerable is what's really allowed Game Boy Rob to set this up. Because even though the trades and the removal potentially isn't going through with the vulnerable, pulling the units to the side and being able to hit the Nexus is all that Game Boy Rob cares about. And with Frostbites, you want to manipulate the trades and save your units, but when you have to choose, do I keep my Ezreal and Puffcat Peddlers alive, my win conditions alive, versus do I want to take less damage on the Nexus, you have to choose your win conditions. I do like that Darkodius is still sticking to the plan, sticking to his guns. He's not playing to survive. He's playing to maximize the chances of Hexcore Foundry just coming through and pulling off this miracle. Right now, there's 16 Puff Caps in Game Boy Rob's deck. So with a little bit more development and a little bit more burn drawn, I am not entirely convinced that Darkodius is 100% out of this game.
Definitely.
Duckling, what do you think here?
Yeah, we see that he has access to that flash freeze. That's huge. That Teemo hit is going to be able to double the shrooms, as you mentioned there. And we have the Ezreal level. It's really going to come down to the next couple of draws here. This is a really tight game.
Ooh, but Thresh, this is another challenger unit that's just going to take advantage of pulling units to the side and getting the damage through. But Teemo manages to connect. Suddenly, we go from 16 to 32 Puff Caps in Game Boy Rob's deck, and the distance you have to cover to finish off the burn gets a little bit lower. Ezreal is also going to use Mystic Shot. This is a very in-between play. I talked potentially that Darkodius would try to send as much burn to the face to close this out in a miracle, but perhaps is feeling a bit more confident now that you can send a little bit, since you freely generated it, to keep the board even. Leveled up Ezreal is the win condition that Darkodius is really hoping for. Do you think, Duckling, that leveled up Ezreal can go the distance from 15 here?
Well, if there's a deck that leveled up Ezreal can do it in, it's definitely this one. I will say he's got to be really happy that Game Boy Rob does not have Black Spear here. He doesn't know that yet. I think that's the consideration when going for this Thermogenic Beam or not, is that once you do that, you are tapping out. So if the opponent does have Black Spear, you do kind of just lose the game on the spot. So he's taking the risk, it looks like, and I think it's a risk he has to take. So
yep.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I like seeing the play from Game Boy Rob of playing Thresh here first, kind of knowing you're going to be eating one of just the Thermo, really, the big removal spell from Darkodius, and now you have a 7/7 Nasus that you can play next turn that has to be dealt with. So you're kind of hedging your bets a little bit, saying, here, you can have my Thresh, but wait for next turn and see what you have to deal with.
Ooh, so then another Thermogenic Beam coming off of the top to just snap deal with this Nasus. This is interesting. There's actually a different line here where Darkodius just goes for, 3 Sisters, Flash Freeze, just try to survive for one more round, and then maybe save the Static Shock. Game Boy Rob has already played 2 Blighted Caretakers. There could just still be another wide threat coming through. And actually, Game Boy Rob is just going to opt for the attack immediately here. Pressure the Ezreal, pressure the Puffcat Peddler, no longer trying to pull them to the side, is beginning to feel the pressure of the Puffcaps and wants to get these off of the board.
I actually liked the original pull a lot more of the 4-3 onto the Ezreal, and that's just because if you think a Flash Freeze is coming down onto this Nasus, it allows the Ezreal to stay alive. Whereas if, maybe he heard me correctly, and because you're expecting the Flash Freeze to come down on Nasus, so you're saying, okay, yes, Troll Chant would keep Ezreal alive, but if it is the Flash Freeze, you're going to have to sacrifice the Ezreal, and I like forcing opponents into that sort of tough spot of, what are you going to value here more? Am I going to be able to get this hit in?
I think you do have to let this Nasus connect with the Puffcat Peddler and keep the Ezreal alive. I think that is your win. You're fully all in on this Ezreal. You got to hope to draw another freeze effect to deal with the Nasus, because the Nasus is not leveling here, which is big. So I think we can allow it to connect. Kind of an interesting decision if we're going for Flash Freeze or making Ezreal big here and killing his unit as well. I think it's always Flash Freeze because we have Static Shock.
And notably too, because you have leveled up Teemo in play, it's not being pulled during this combat either. The Puffcat Peddler going down doesn't hurt as bad. You still have another way to generate a lot of mushrooms against the opponent. So 3 Sisters creates the Flash Freeze along with Static Shock. Going to get damage on the Nexus, going to draw a card, going to get another ping onto the Nexus thanks to the Static Shock. And Game Boy Rob, even without Hexcore Foundry in play, is still under a lot of pressure to take some burn here.
I really like this. Making sure that we commit all the spells while the Puffcat Peddler is still alive, as well as the Ezreal, and getting that draw in. We found another Flash Freeze. That's huge. That should be really, really good here for Darkodius. It's gonna be tough for Game Boy Rob to pull this one.
It feels like
Little
we were
victory
at
out of this
15 HP on the side of Game Boy Rob just a moment ago. Where did it go?
It goes quick.
Just a little bit of healing. NASA's up to 9-6, but it's just not going to be enough. Only one mushroom! Oh my goodness, there's nearly 50 in the deck. Now it is doubled. We've got the Mystic Shot lethal still to cover that spread. And it does happen. Leveled up Ezreal, able to go the distance there.
That was a really close game, and it really did come down to the draws there at the end. But very well played by Darkodius.
So it's going to game 3 in this set, it looks like, huh?
Yeah, so it is going to be going to game 3. And again, I loved the aggressive start that was coming through from Nasus Thresh. And it was only after, like, you go all in for this aggressive line and you realize that it's not working. We saw a little bit of an attempt to pivot to start to actually respect those win conditions a little bit more. And it ended up just being a little bit too late. If there was a different pull there where you don't answer the Puffcat Peddler or the Nasus or the Ezreal at all, and you just pull them to the side with the Cursed Keeper and that and the Blighted Caretaker, and then try to force through on the Nexus that round, maybe things shake out a little bit differently. But overall, not quite the outcome that Nasus Thresh wants to hope for in that scenario.
And we are now into the game 3. We have Nasus Thresh into Renekton, Sejuani, and Sivir Overwhelm.
Oh, just 1 second, y'all.
No worries.
I accidentally spected a Game Boy Rob. I have to pull the hand for Darkodius. Just give me 1 moment.
Are you in as well, Duckling?
No problem. Yep.
Nice, man. What do you think, Duckling, here? Like, who's favored in this matchup? I haven't played this exact one very, very many times.
Also, I think it comes down to lists here. I think if Darkodius is on Ice Shards as well as Three Sisters, I think this is a pretty good matchup for Darkodius. Three Sisters having that freeze effect for Nasus, and Ice Shard with the ability to clear out
all right, I'm in
Caretaker type boards. But
Nice.
yeah, it's definitely not a free win by any means, and it's always very close.
Well, we did push some damage here, and it's round 4, and there's already 13 HP on the side of Darkodius and 14 HP on the side of Rob. So this is going to be a race, and I dare say face is the place.
The base race has begun, and with Renekton coming down, this matchup is actually pretty difficult for Renekton to survive in. Things like Escaped Abomination, Merciless Hunter, and even Spirit Leech with that 4 attack. It makes it so difficult for Renekton to safely survive for the amount of turns you want him to. And just getting a swing there helps a little bit, but this is just going to be evened out. I think this is what we're going to see over the rest of this matchup, is one side taking a massive just haymaker swing, the other side trying to do that massive damage in response. And when you consider the amount of damage that both decks are capable of, I'm not sure which one is more favored. Just tall overwhelm damage versus wide swarmy damage is going to be the matchup here.
Duckling, you did mention looking for flash freezes and ice shards in the list. I have Darkodius's list pulled up. There's only 1 Three Sisters. There are 3 Troll Chants and of course 3 Battle Furies, but we are not seeing any ice shards or any mained decked freezes.
Ooh, so without that fail safe of having Ice Shard as a response to like a wide Blighted Caretaker type board, Darkodius is really playing the overwhelm game where you have to just hope that your deck's curve comes together the way you want it to.
Fortunately for Darkodius too, we do see that he has the 1 copy of Three Sisters in his hand, and I'm sure that'll come into play this game too.
Yeah, a flash freeze to throw off your opponent's lethal. a Fury of the North to sneak through a little bit extra damage, even an emergency Entomb to stop, a lethal swing or an atrocity or something could be in the future here. Darkodius thinking, do I want to float this mana, try to set up this Battle Fury, or do I want to just slam down the Ruin Runner now?
Very interesting play. Using the right here to get the Slay trigger as well as get the 4/3 out, so we have a little bit beefier of a board. It's definitely a strong play here that I think I can really appreciate here, and that you see a high-level player like Game Boy Rob noticing that I think a lot of people would just pass on.
Mm-hmm. Right of Negation, going to be a dead card in this matchup. Most everything it does is burst.
Mm-hmm.
That is a lot of overwhelms and a lot of numbers on the attack stat there on the overwhelms.
And still has to go for it, right? You give your opponent a good... Oh, this is... the 7/7 Nasus has just the right amount of stats to stifle what was shaping up to be a really devastating attack from Darkodius. And Renekton still miraculously surviving, taking advantage of the vulnerables here spectacularly, and just getting a quick hover here. With this attack connecting, Renekton will level. And it would just be one more round of survival on Darkodius, and then a level 2 Renekton, gaining that +3/+3 on the next attack, will potentially close this out. Both players even on Nexus HP right now.
I think you're looking at Glimpse here on Rob's side and saying, do we want to use it? I would say the answer is no. Keep that 3 health that you're gaining from the toughness on your unit, and maybe Glimpse the 3/1 after the fact. But that's something to be looking at here as well.
Yeah, keep getting those Slay procs and growing that Nasus.
Yeah, exactly. I think that the strategy that Game Boy Rob's going to go for, that's a perfect draw, is to try to get this Nasus up to 10 attack this turn, go for a swing to bait out any kind of freeze, and then you have the lethal with the Nasus next turn if they don't have a Troll Chant in addition to a Flash Freeze.
So Game Boy Rob in a position where you have to play and plan a couple rounds ahead in order to take the game, whereas Darkodius has everything already set up. And so you're really hoping that Darkodius is going to struggle to deal with this 8/8 Nasus that's kind of holding the fort. The Merciless Hunter still carrying past through beyond the grave with that vulnerable still existing on Renekton, however.
I actually think I would have gone for a different line here, not knowing the opponent's hand. I think I would have gone for a right earlier, not played the Bakai, hope that you draw another Nasus, and then have the 5 mana available to then hit with the Nasus into a champion. If you're going to eat a Flash Freeze, let it happen this turn, hope they don't have another, and then go for an Atro next turn. You would still be at 9 Slays. I think that may have been a better line.
Okay, trying to go for the siphoning strike.
Yeah, because you want to be eating those freezes defensively, and so if they stopped it with a freeze here, you would still have the stats, have the Nasus for next turn. This is a different approach to be doing it, but they will still have that freeze. He doesn't have to stop this.
Yeah, I would really like to see a glimpse out of Game Boy Rob here. On his 2/2, so that he's threatening the Nasus level up, forcing the freeze out, and then like you said, he can go for that Atro next turn. And if he doesn't have the freeze, then he just gets Spell Shield, and the Atro's like guaranteed to go through. Yeah, there you go. Very
this
nice.
Is correct. Yeah, you have to make him take the freeze now, or say I'm getting Spell Shield.
Mm-hmm.
And by forcing out the freeze,
only runs one. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, yeah, and by forcing out the freeze now to stop the Spell Shield, you're still eating a freeze that's going to potentially stop an atrocity down the road, and so you have this fantastic fork going into the next round.
Maybe Rob's line was better, because he still has 2 mana, and he is drawing 2 cards, so it kind of got to the same place in the end.
The siphoning strike is just so juicy. I could respect both.
I think it's going to come down to if Darkodius top decks a Troll Chant here.
Yep. And this should be telling Rob, actually, that he doesn't have another freeze effect. Because if he did have another freeze effect, you could save it for next turn, right? And then just do it when there's an Atro, because you'll be threatening lethal. Actually, though, you may need Battle Fury to get this. No, you don't need the Battle Fury. Yeah, you may be able to get a read here from that your opponent doesn't have another freeze effect if they're going for that right now.
Oh my goodness, and Game Boy Rob managing to weather this onslaught, set up the Nasus, set up the Slays to get him just big enough to kill this Nexus. The last wind coming down for good measure. 1 mana 3/3. Woo baby, Ravenous Butcher is really feeling the pain right now.
Yeah, that Wings top deck was very strong. It makes it so we can not even lose to a Troll Chant here. And I think you said earlier too, Darkodius is only on 1 freeze, so this Atrocity.
Yep. That
should
was the
work
freeze.
pretty much
There
every
is no
time.
more freeze. Yep. This is extremely well played from Rob. Played well from Darkodius as well. There were some very solid draws, nice curve, kind of what Overwhelm wants to do. But I would say this is a very difficult matchup to play from the Thresh Nasus side, and played to his outs, held the Nasus back, got the Slays to where they needed to be, and brought it home in the end. Very well played from both players in that game 3.